Welcome to Bloom Today. We have an interesting show for you. We're going to be asking, are you treating your symptoms or are you getting to the root of the problem?
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Ginny, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Welcome everybody to Bloom Today. And today we're talking about, are you just treating symptoms or are you actually getting to the root of the problem? And Ginny, you've never had any symptoms, have you?
Symptoms? Like the flu? I've had a whole lot of those symptoms. Not today, thankfully.
How about other symptoms like, I don't know, codependency or...
Oh, well, that has a whole lot of symptoms. I mean, specifically, codependency, I think, is the one of the root problems that has the most options for symptoms. I definitely had a whole lot of those, for sure.
What about addictions?
Addictions, they have symptoms for sure, and there's a whole road that leads to addiction. But I think addiction is actually a symptom. Mm-hmm. It's not really the root cause, and that's where people can get tripped up, where they feel like, well, you have to stop. For me, it was stop drinking. You have to focus on this one specific problem. When in actuality, for me, that codependency was really the issue. I was looking to people to try and fill me up and to find my value and my identity, but in the meantime, since I couldn't get the fulfillment that I was looking for, alcohol was the numbing agent. So it was actually the symptom of a much bigger problem.
Right, and for me, it was, I don't know, everything from food addiction to, I had reading addictions, and I had, panic attacks and...
Oh, I had those too.
Abusive relationships.
I had one or two of those. Yeah.
With bosses, spouses, whoever. Mm-hmm. But it was really easy to look at the health issue or the addiction or the relationship issues and treat those.
Sure. I had all kinds of friendship issues as well. So I thought there was something wrong with me. I had boundary issues. So I would really try really hard to make people happy, and it was all over the place. I never had some really solid relationships where I could actually work through something. If I was upset with someone, I either cut them off completely, or I chased after them like crazy, needing them to love me, needing them to like me. And all of that are symptoms, of course, of a much bigger problem. But that's what I was trying to fix. Oh, I'm just not confident enough. I guess I just don't have self-esteem, or maybe I have control issues because I want to control what this person is doing or saying. But really, at the root of it was the codependency, was the people idolatry or the people worship, essentially.
Right, and it was funny for me because I thought if I could just quit whatever the problem was, cold turkey. Right? Mm-hmm. So fight through a food addiction and just stop eating. Oh, wait. That didn't fix the addiction.
Stopping eating is not really an option, unfortunately.
I did that. I would fast for like 10 days. And then when I started eating, I would gain more weight back than what I had lost in the 10 days. Within 3 days, I would have gained the weight and more, because I wasn't dealing with the root of the problem. And if I quit the food addiction and it went into a relationship addiction, and when that broke up, then it went into an entertainment addiction, or it,
I spent quite a few evenings Netflix binging myself. I get that. Wanting to escape any way that we can, wanting to escape. It's like, you told me the other day that you got into your car.
Oh. Yeah.
And there was an interesting smell in there, I think.
Speaking of root of the problem, I got into my truck and it just smelled horrible. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? Because the air freshener in there wasn't working. You opened the windows and it wasn't getting rid of it. And this is horrible. But my kids get in the car, and of course with 3 boys, you never know what you're going to hear. And they were like, Mom, did you fart? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, boys.
Being a mom of boys, that's just normal language for them, and apologies to anybody that bothers. But I was sitting there going, no, there's something wrong. Like, start digging around. Did one of you leave your stinky shoes in the truck?
Sure.
Is there something rotten?
Really yeah.
Whatever. And they started digging around and ended up finding underneath one of the seats some food that they had. And they're supposed to take it in. I told them, take that in with you.
Sure.
And then I thought they had actually eaten it, so I never saw it in the house. But I didn't realize it was still in the truck under the seat. And we had to get rid of that before we had any chance of actually fixing the smell that was in there. And I think a lot of times the addictions or the surface symptoms that we think are the big deal that we need to treat are just like that smell. They're never going to go away. We can just keep changing it to other things until we dig deeper and find out what is really causing the problem to start with and do something about that.
All the Febreze in the world is not going to cover the rotting food smell, unfortunately.
No, that was nasty.
So what can we do? How can we help people to understand that getting to the root of the problem is not is the way to go, instead of looking at all of these symptoms left and right?
Well, I think sometimes we don't understand the benefit of finding the root, that there are reasons, specific reasons, that you want to start digging. And you can dig through counseling, you can dig through accountability, recovery program, dig through a pastor or a mentor helping you work through what the core issue is. But sometimes we don't do it just because we don't know how it'll help or what the benefit of it is.
Sure.
And so I know for me that stopping the insanity was one of the primary ones, because I was in cycles. If it wasn't one huge mess, it was a different one. And I was the common denominator in all of the messes.
Right. Wherever you go, there you are.
I am. I would move, I would change scenery, I would change what I was doing.
Sure.
It did not change anything because at the end of the day, I was there. And there was no getting rid of that. But we're discussing running around and doing the whack-a-mole type of thing or something with the symptoms.
Oh, I got to put out this fire. Oh, I got to put out this fire. Oh, I got to put out this fire. And a lot of times we actually can do that to try and distract ourselves from the real pain. Because that's scary to feel sometimes. We don't want to go there. That hurts too much. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to throw myself into this service project. I'm going to do this thing at church. But really, it's insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result, expecting to get peace. We're never actually going to get peace until we dig to the root of the problem.
Right, and that was where I learned in landscaping. I did commercial sales in landscaping at one point.
Of course you did.
We have that in common, of course, right?
Yes, landscaping, yes.
So the fire ants, I learned that, you can kill a fire ant hill, and then you can kill a different one that pops up and kill a different one that pops up, and you can keep doing that over and over and over again, and you still have a fire ant problem because there's a nest underground that's way deeper that all these superficial hills are actually tied to.
Right.
And so if you don't use something that will kill the main ant nest at the way underneath,
literally get below the surface.
Below the surface, below the roots, get underneath to the root core problem with that nest, then all you're doing is fighting ant hills. And what's crazy about that, I realized when my son, when he was a toddler, my oldest, he climbed into a fire ant nest, and he ended up having them crawl up him and all bite him at the same time. So he had welts all over his little body. And my not handling an ant problem had consequences for my son. And so many times when we're not handling the core root problem of our own issues, it hurts the people around us. It hurts our spouses, it hurts our children, it hurts our friends. We don't live in a
vacuum at all. We'd like to say, oh no, I'm only hurting myself, but we don't live in a vacuum. There are other people that are interacting with us every single day. I'm reminded of the woman at the well who had, 4 husbands, and she was living with a fifth man.
The fifth that wasn't even her husband.
There was a root issue that she was not looking at.
And that's what Jesus was saying, was if you come to me, I can deal with that. And that's the same thing with any of our root issues, is actually going to Jesus directly, not religion, not Christianity as an organization or as a formula.
Sure.
But actually going to the person of Jesus. And believing in him and asking him to step into those broken places and start dealing with the core issues and healing down beneath the surface. And it's a process. It's been 10 years of my actively pursuing healing in that way to get where I am today, but digging deeper and deeper to get to those core issues.
When you stop the insanity, then you can start the true healing and actually dig down in there. Because when we're able to do that, then we can finally address that, dig it out by the root, and then we can heal from that once and for all. We don't have to keep picking out the symptoms over and over and over again. We're healed once and for all. So it may be painful for us to look at it at first and to process everything that's happened and go through it, but it's the results of that are so worth it.
Because then you actually start reaching true healing.
Absolutely.
And true healing helps you with all those symptoms.
Well, they disappear. There's no, if there's no root, then there's no plant, right? If there's no, to get rid of the symptoms, you need to get rid of the root.
That totally works. And sometimes we have to retrain our minds, retrain our actions, retrain our lives, because many times we've been conditioned to those symptoms, to those broken areas in our life, and their habits, their patterns. And so as we get healing for the root causes, we then have to change our mindset and change our patterns so that we can actually have that true healing expand throughout all the areas.
I finally learned how to have healthy boundaries. Amazing. And once that core issue was gone with looking to people, and I looked to God instead, I realized, I could stand up to someone, I could share my opinion, and it wasn't necessarily a confrontation anymore as I had imagined in my mind. Now it was actually me just sharing information about my opinion and educating someone on how I felt. And all of a sudden, it was no longer this confrontation that I had to fear anymore, because I was at peace, because I had received the healing.
Right, and sometimes we think that because it hurts to go through that process, digging for the core problem really hurts. At least it really has in my life.
Yeah.
And I've had counselors and therapists and pastors help me with that. But in Psalm 147:3, it says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds.
Amen.
And I think sometimes we think just because it hurts means that he's not healing it yet.
Right.
And instead, it's that it takes the hurt to find where we need that healing to come in. And every layer that we do, that he brings healing into, gives us the strength to do the next layer and the next layer and keep digging down. Depending on how bad the cycles of brokenness or abuse have been, it can be a good long process, like it has been for me.
Absolutely. But it's
worth it.
Absolutely, it's worth it. There is a kind of productive pain rather than the pain of living in the insanity.
Because we're in pain either way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just get it done rather than living with it forever. It gets heavier and heavier as we go, and it compounds, I think.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So coming closer to God helps Satan's lies be revealed, where we actually can start finding clarity and peace, not just in one area of brokenness, but where I've healed in one place that was broken from having been raped as a child or having been in an abusive relationship or whatever it is. That has then expanded out into healing and wholeness in all of my relationships, in all of my different choices. And I was able to actually start to rest, not be frantic and worried and torn about and tormented all the time, but actually start to have rest at night and during the day.
Praise God. Sleep is so important.
It is. It makes a really big difference.
It allows us to have more clarity and peace during the day and continue to heal, even emotionally. And you said earlier, retraining our brain, all of that. So good. So if you want to learn more about this, if you want to learn how to put this in perspective of your life and find out how you can heal and how you can dig out the roots and get to the root of the problem and have those tools, we actually have a coaching tool for you. And it's just a worksheet where you'll get some more information and we'll ask you some questions. And you can download that online at bloomtodaytv.com. And I'm so excited because you actually have a really interesting image that you want to share with us that goes along with this topic.
It's a painting. I've met the artist, and his whole point is to glorify God through art, and that's Stephen Sawyer, who has the Art for God. And this is called Calvary. And if you look at it closely, you can see that it actually represents,
I love it,
all kinds of addictions, from shooting up to gambling to violence to alcohol to smoking to drugs. And there's Jesus being willing to take our brokenness and our pain for us. And so this is just such a beautiful representation of God's heart to step into our brokenness, not to wait for us to be perfect first.
Right.
But to help us.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to share that.
Yes. And so many times, we can't, once the symptoms get to that point, we can't do it on our own. We need to look to others. And we set recovery programs, counselors, and we have a counselor here today that I am excited to introduce to you. She is an ordained minister as well, so she's got both ends of the spectrum, the clinical and the spiritual. She's also a co-founder of Moving Forward Ministries. Maggie Kavanaugh is here. Would you come on in, Maggie? I would love
Ginny, can you give her a hand?
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Jenny.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
And as promised, here is your hand.
Oh. I love it. I always love a helping hand. Those of you in the audience, hello. Good to see you.
Welcome to our kitchen.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Paula.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you, and
you
great
look
to be
so
here.
cute.
Well, thank you so much.
I love it. Maggie, you have all of this training and this good stuff, but your story starts from a place of brokenness as well, right?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about how that started?
Certainly. I think all of us are trying to find a fix for ourselves. And we started at a young age believing lies. And as a baby and 9 kids, dysfunctional family, father not in the picture, desiring to be loved. And when I was in the 4th grade, I made a trip to Florida and had an encounter with my biological father for the first time, and met all of my half-sisters and stepbrother and so forth. And they were all partying. And so I thought, okay, he has their affection, he has their attention, he has their time, everything. So maybe if I do that, then I will be loved.
Wow.
I love what you were saying about the codependency piece of it, because it does. It crosses over. And there were times in my life that led me into a downward spiral. And by the time I was in the 8th grade, I was selling drugs and doing drugs and, dropped out of school. And, of course, I worked because I was a responsible addict or a responsible user. I always, and this went on and carried into my adulthood.
Yeah.
And had kids. No one would have ever known I had a secret addiction, because when I had kids, I quit using what I call the hard drugs. I quit snorting coke and dropping acid, and I just smoked marijuana because that was acceptable. And back then, they didn't know about ADHD and things like that. And I know you never noticed. I'm a little, just never noticed.
You don't have any energy at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
So what do you do with that? As an adult, you're trying to fix yourself. And so I put my kids in bed at night, and I would go out in my Florida room and I'd smoke a joint to calm down, because I did not know that the presence of the Lord was my peace.
Right.
And so with that being said, it just, my addictions, my desire to be loved, all led into marrying an alcoholic who later became an addict. And I don't even need to go there, because you can only imagine how bad it got.
That's a whole lot of symptoms.
Brokenness.
And a door that opens a whole lot of symptoms.
Oh, it was crazy. And if people would have asked my kids at the time when they were little, who's crazier, your addict dad or your codependent mom? And it would have been me. I was psycho woman, okay?
Wow.
Definitely. So, but I'm a firm believer. I'm a Romans 8:28 woman. I believe that God works all things together for the good, and he took all the brokenness. And of course, I didn't have an education, because, when I was in the 8th grade, I'm like, I'm just going to continue to wait tables and sell drugs the rest of my life. I don't need an education. It wasn't really valued in my circle. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to get out of, because I quit using myself and I was going to Al-Anon for the codependency. And I'm like, if I'm going to get free, there's a couple things I'm going to need. And which led me to my relationship with the Lord. I had that form of godliness. I had the Bible laying on the coffee table and the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi hanging in the dining room, and over to the right, the Lord's Prayer. And I had all this stuff because I grew up Catholic, not hating on Catholics, loved Catholics, God loves Catholics, but I had religion. I didn't have a relationship. Right. So I recognized I needed to get an education, went back to school, started studying, and went on, got my bachelor's, got a divorce, went on and got my master's so that I could help other people that were struggling, because I seen the vicious cycle, and I seen how not tending to your garden can really mess you up and those that you love.
It absolutely can. And also, you had mentioned before when we talked that there was even trauma that was related to
Absolutely.
adding to the mess that you were already dealing with. What happened with that?
Well, I was raped by one of my friend's brothers, and because I had such a low self-image and had such a flirtiness about me, I thought it was my fault.
How old were you?
I was 12 when that happened. And
so do you think any 12-year-old would be at fault, no matter how flirty and no matter how much they wanted attention? Would
Absolutely not.
Okay, because we want to make sure that anybody who has been a child, no matter what age you were, that takes the blame for it, which is normal. I took the blame when I was 5 when I got raped. We take that blame, but understanding that a lot of times where that damage has been done, that compounds the codependence, that compounds all the things that lead to needing to escape and needing to see ourselves, our worth and our value differently, because it's been devastated in a way that we've compounded through adding that blame, which we all do it. So
I agree 100%. That's when my heavy drug use started using. Why do people use drugs? They want to feel different. I wanted to cover my pain. I didn't want to have to deal with it. I couldn't handle the thought of what had happened and the trauma, so covering it up.
Right.
And I did it very well.
It's an escape.
It is a major escape.
But you didn't have to stay there.
Absolutely not.
That's the other thing. Thank God none of us have to stay there. So then how did God come into your story and start to heal that and get you on a completely different track? I know you said you got a divorce, so I'm sure that helped because you weren't under the even more addiction in your home.
Sure. Well, it's funny, you had mentioned that going to a different place, they say different places, different spaces, and there you go, there you are. So I had to really take a hard look in the mirror, and I had to determine, okay, what is broken in me? And that really came with cultivating intimacy with the Lord. And I had an encounter with the Lord. It transformed my life, and I'll tell you, if it wasn't for Him, I don't know if I would live to tell the story.
Yeah.
And so that's really where it came alive, and I really felt the presence of the Lord and His love. And it gave me my sense of identity in Him, not in what I did, not in what other people thought about me, but in Him.
Absolutely.
So was there a time that you noticed a clear-cut place where you had switched from just being in a victim cycle, and whether it's self-victimization or other people hurting you, where you'd switch from that into experiencing a different feeling about yourself or about life, where you're more blooming?
When you started blooming.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that's a kind of a key word.
It's interesting because you would think with the, I lived in Florida for 20 years, and I moved to Tennessee in 2005, and I really believe I started blooming here. You think about Florida and you think about all kinds of tropical plants and beautiful scenery and so forth, but Tennessee, I came in 2005, and I had been pouring out and ministering to other people, and you can't give what you don't have. And so I could not go any further with helping other people until I really went further. When I came to Tennessee, I met a group of women, and just transparency and realness. And when we're younger, it's hard to have those relationships. There's always that sense of comparison and all that junk that we go through. But I met women that were real, and they were transparent, and it caused me to dig deeper. And I started blooming and flourishing, and of course I haven't arrived. We don't ever arrive, The reality is God just takes us to another level of His healing and His love. Like an onion, layers coming off little by little and going to that place of breakthrough.
So good. I love it. Maggie, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. It's an honor, and thank you for having me.
Well, we are so glad that you're here because we are naming you the ex-victim of the week.
Woo!
So congratulations,
Yay.
you get a parting gift.
Chocolates, tissues, yes, and a necklace.
And you get a necklace that matches my tattoo, because we didn't think you would want to just go get a tattoo to match mine, but we thought that it would be.
You can pray about that, though.
I'm radical, but that's where I kind of draw some boundaries. I learned about boundaries, So.
Yeah, and we're not trying to influence anybody to get tattoos, so we give them a necklace, and that way they have the symbolism of going from being a victim to being an ex-victim in God through Christ, and His blood and His healing so that we can bloom.
Yeah, you've owned it. You've said, I was a victim, and now I'm no longer a
Yes.
victim. I love it.
Yes. Well, you know, John 10:10 says the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and Jesus came so we can have life. I had a lot of my life stolen from me, and let me tell you, I am appropriating the work of the cross and taking it back and blooming to give Him glory.
And more abundant life.
Amen.
And that's a piece I've noticed as the healing happens, like on a scale. You're mostly broken, and then as you heal and heal and heal, you end up being able to flourish and bloom proportional to the healing. So you end up being on this end of the scale, more and more healing, more and more beauty, more and more flourishing, which is an amazing thing. I don't know where it ends, because I plan to keep healing and keep growing.
That's right.
I hope it never ends.
Every day.
Right.
Maggie, what are you most grateful for?
Oh,
right now
for
your
the
healing?
cross. I mean, really for the cross, because we every day have the opportunity to get up and take whatever is trying to attach itself to us, whatever is trying to weigh us down. We have the opportunity. You know, weeping endures for the night, but joy comes in the morning. So we can get up and give it to the Lord. So thankful for the cross.
Oh my goodness. That's such a beautiful example of how God met us where we were when we were yet sinners. And, you know, there's a reason that we blame ourselves for being the victim, is because we're not free of sin. We do have things that are, that we've done wrong choices that we've made, but the cross allows us to come back into alignment with Him and not have to be separated from the Lord. So absolutely.
Thank you, Jesus.
I think that's amazing.
It is, and we get the chance through Bloom Today to share your story, to share the beauty of redemption, because you have such a beautiful countenance, and seeing the life of Christ in you, every time I get to see you, is seeing that life and light in you is an opportunity to get to share that with everybody else and say, hey, just because you've been broken, just because you've been in that place of devastation, just because people have taken advantage of you or controlled you or abused you, doesn't mean you can't have not just life, but life abundantly.
Yes, absolutely. Amen.
Amen. Abundantly. What is? I mean, when we are walking in that brokenness, and we're trying to find the root and the core, that's not life abundantly. That is insanity abundantly. Is it not?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So getting to the root, getting deeper down, as we are living testimonies to that you get through that pain, you get through. To the other side. Winston Churchill said, if you are going through hell, keep going. Don't stay where you are.
That's right.
Keep going. Keep looking to the root of the issue, and find those people who can be transparent around you, who can help you grow and learn about what you're going through. There are people who have been there. We all know brokenness.
Yes.
We all understand it. They can help you go from where you are to where you want to be.
And you're now ministering to other people.
Absolutely.
Through Moving Forward Ministries, right?
Yes, Moving Forward Ministries has given me the outlet to be able to serve others that are going through transition and going through times, and let them see the transparency. I think that people, they don't really, you know, you hear the saying that people don't care what they know.
We just end up blooming today, right?
That's exactly right.
That's what we do. Blooming today.
A free PDF copy of the Bloom in the Dark book and a full list of Bloom Today's coaching tools can be found on bloomtodaytv.com. Then visit Bloom Today's Facebook group for deeper conversation.